Right, firstly, this play obviously tackles some big issues. What made you pick that as a subject?
I saw a documentary about the EDL, and there was a guy on it, and he was talking about how Muslims and Islam had basically ruined the foundations of Great Britain, and how we needed to get rid of it basically. But what really interested me was he was saying get rid of it, but he wasn't actually saying what we should replace it with. It was just all hatred, and so I thought, well, that's not really a solution. But then I thought, well, there's not really that type of person talk about this is on a lot of people's minds, and I thought, well, how could I tackle this issue? But rather than do it with the EDL, like I say, a few people have written plays about the EDL and they've done it quite well. I want to do something rather more nuanced, and what I've noticed is, particularly living in Yorkshire, over the past 50 years we've seen a lot of change, culturally and ethnically, particularly in places like Bradford and Dewsbury, where there's been a large influx of the Asian population. But a lot of old people, because they were brought up in different times, etc., they feel kind of isolated and uncomfortable with it. So I thought that would be a really good angle to tackle the subject from, because it tackles it, but it does it on a more, it's at home, do you know what I mean? And it's on the doorstep, and it's a more suburban context. So I thought that would be more powerful. How this is actually an everyday problem rather than people marching in the streets, it's at home kind of thing.
And you've actually been out into the community, and I mean, you mentioned you chatted with someone at a mosque.
Yeah, we've been to a lot of community events to kind of gauge in what they think, because the interesting thing about the play is, because I know a lot of people, elderly people, who aren't very happy with change in Britain, as they call it, but at the same time there's a lot of Asian people, a lot of Muslim people who also have prejudice towards, so it's like a two-way street basically. These prejudices are on both sides. It was really interesting talking to them and how they felt. Baroness Wazi, she was at at the end of Ramadan, they had a meal at Makkah Mosque in Headingley, and she said that the University of Nottingham did a survey where I think it was 67% of the British people think that Islam and Britain can't, they're not compatible. And I thought that was really interesting. Again, it emphasised this idea that this is a problem at the home front, do you know what I mean? And when I went to the mosque, there's only about 4 white people there, and it's weird because we say we live in a multicultural society, and we do, but it's almost like we've segmented, do you know what I mean? There's no real kind of integration. People live on one part and people live on the other if they're different cultures. So it's a prominent issue from both sides, but I think a lot of Asian people, I spoke to a lad called Siddiq, and he had been receiving abuse, and I think the worst part is the ignorance of it, and that's what the play tries to combat, how ignorant people actually are, because in the play you've got these two diverse characters who are actually quite the same. Do you know what I mean? They've actually got so much in common despite the fact they don't think it. So I think the biggest problem is ignorance, and hopefully the play will tackle that.
I mean, part of the reason you're here is because you want more people to get involved in the play.
Yeah, definitely. We've opened the play up to as many people as possible. As I say, we've been to the Makkah Mosque. We've got the Leeds Metropolitan University Islamic Society coming down and doing workshops with them. But as I say, any local mosques in the community who could come to the workshops that we'll hold in on the 19th of October at the Hub at Hunslet. If anyone wants to, or anyone who's just interested and just wants to come down and debate, because what theatre is, we're going to use the play and its themes and its topics. It's a safe place to discuss these things, and rather than vent all this anger and be as bad as the people who are pushing all these things forward, you can actually come to the theatre. It's a safe platform where you can discuss these things. And so anyone who wants to come down, please feel free to do so.
Brilliant. And just finally, why do you think this is an important issue to get out there?
Because I think with this play, I wrote it last year, and I think Islamic prejudice was around then. And this year, particularly with what's happened in Woolwich, and I think the aftermath of that with attacks on mosques and things like that, and I don't think the press help at all. It's more prominent than ever now. So a play like this really is tackling it. And as I say, it's not tackling it in the sense that it's about an EDL march or it's about fascism. It's just about normal people and their own inner truths that they're probably too afraid to face. And I just think it's such an important issue, and it's like a lot of things, unless we tackle it head on, nobody else will. So that's why we're doing it.
Brilliant. And is there anything you want to add?
Just that if as many people could come down to the workshops, that would be fantastic. The play itself is on at the Carriage Works in Leeds on the 25th and 26th of October, and it's a 7:30 start, so it'd be great to see a lot of people there.